Good afternoon. Thank you for joining Second Chance Act Innovations and Supervision Initiative, formerly known as the Smart Supervision Orientation Webinar. The purpose of this webinar is to share information about this grant program, including submission of the Planning and Implementation Guide and related timelines. We will also discuss resources that are available to support your grant and answer questions about expectations for the process. My name is Mary Heidel-Hayes, the Corrections Project Manager with the Council of State Governments Justice Center, and I will be presenting today along with Heather Tubman-Carbone, Senior Policy Advisor at the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice. I'm excited to share that we're also joined by McAlister, Program Manager for Coconino County, Arizona Adult Probation, a fiscal year 13 Innovations and Supervision grantee. Thanks to all of you for joining the webinar, and to BJA and Coconino County for partnering with us on this presentation. Before getting started, I'd like to briefly talk through a couple of housekeeping items about how the webinar is going to work. Anytime during this webinar, you could ask a question by typing it into the Q&A panel on the bottom right-hand portion of your screen. This includes both technical and content-related questions. We will try to reply to technical questions in the chat window as we go. For the content-related questions, we will keep a running list and address them at the end of the webinar. We will do our best to get through as many questions as possible. If you encounter technical or audio problems during this webinar, please call WebEx Technical Support at 1-866-229-3239. Also understand that there are some technical issues you may not be able to resolve. For this reason, we're recording the content portion of this webinar, and we will post it on our website at csjusticecenter.org/NRRC. We should have the webinar posted online early next week. Once it's been posted, we will email you a link to the recording. I will now turn over the presentation to Heather Tubman-Carbone, Senior Policy Advisor at the Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Mary, and thank you also to the team behind the scenes at CSG. And thank you to Kara for joining us. We're so excited for new grantees to hear about the exciting work that your agency has been doing. So by way of quick background, the Second Chance Act has supported over $300 million in reentry investments to a variety of initiatives across the country. You may have heard of the Smart Supervision Grant Program or the Adult Demonstration Grant Program. This is the program formerly known as Smart Supervision. As you can imagine, we've gone through some rebranding, and we're excited for folks to be a part of our new innovation suite, which you'll hear a bit more about later. The Bureau of Justice Assistance administers these grants, as well as some others, and we are very excited to welcome you, the new cohort of Innovations in Supervision grantees. So first, congratulations on your award. You should know that BJA selected your applications out of a competition from across the country, and it was quite competitive this past year. So before I dive into background on the program, I just want to take a minute to talk about the incredible projects that are proposed to be undertaken by your group. In this year's cohort, we have the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, who's going to tailor supervision practices for different need and risk profiles in different geographic areas. We have the San Diego Association of Governments, who will be integrating public health and safety through the co-location of behavioral health and supervision officers and funding for treatment. We've also got the Massachusetts Parole Board in this cohort, who's looking to implement medication-assisted treatment coupled with behavioral health counseling and high-intensity supervision for high-risk, high-needs parolees with a history of opioid misuse. The Judiciary of Arizona will be expanding implementation, improvement, and impact studies of EPICS, effective practices in community supervision, and use an e-learning program to evaluate it. The Mayor's Office in Baltimore is coordinating a partnership between the Baltimore Police Department and Maryland Probation and Parole to provide intensified case management and to develop swift, certain, and fair responses to the behavior of 18 to 24-year-olds in particular zones throughout the city. Additionally, the St. Louis County Department of Justice Services hopes to reduce the length of stay in the St. Louis County Jail from 99 days to less than 10 days. The program will provide comprehensive case management and treatment services to individuals booked into the jail for technical violations. And last but certainly not least, the Pennsylvania Board of Probation and Parole will be piloting an enhanced gender-specific parole supervision program for female parolees to test whether EGPS is more effective at reducing violations and recidivism than standard parole. This is a great variety of initiatives, and there's so much for you all to learn from one another, and we hope you'll take advantage of opportunities to do just that throughout the grant period. And there are many others to learn from as well. Here's a quick look at all the current awards in this grant track. In a review of past grants, we found that nearly 90% had either a primary focus on training or incorporated training as a component of their grant program. Grantees providing solely direct services were in the minority. And from the descriptions you just heard of this year's group, you can get a sense of how we're looking a little bit different moving forward, and we're so excited to see this grant program transform. Over the course of the grant, you'll connect with 3 or 4 different groups of people. At BJA, you'll have contact with the policy office and the programs office. I will be your contact at the policy office, and the program staff will be your contacts about items pertaining to finances and progress reports or grant adjustment notices, as some of you may be familiar with. The next line you'll see on the slide is Booz Allen Hamilton. Booz Allen runs the performance management tool, and you will be submitting data there on a regular basis. Additionally, you see the third line on there is your National Reentry Resource Center training and technical assistance providers, who are running this webinar and with whom you'll have the greatest amount of contact. We do all work together. For example, if you want to change an item in your budget or a major activity in your grant, you'll talk it through with your TA provider, and if in agreement, you'll then share it with me in the policy office at BJA, and if we're all in agreement, you would then submit a grant adjustment notice electronically through the grants management system, and the policy advisor would review it to ensure that all budgetary requirements are met. So you can see how we all work together, and you should never hesitate to reach out to any one of us. And of course, your TA provider can liaise that for you. Next, we'll talk briefly about the Innovations in Supervision Initiative. Overall, the goal of this program is to improve the capacity and effectiveness of your agencies to increase probation and parole success rates, which, as you know, in turn, would reduce the number of crimes committed by people under community supervision. Now, the question we often get is, why use ISI to do this? Of course, you all applied for this grant program, so you can likely answer that question even better than I can. But from where I sit at BJA, here's the rationale. First, our expectation is that this grant program provides you with some seed money. We know that there's a lot on your plate, and it's very difficult to get a program up and running or to get a new training initiative off the ground. And so we see this as seed money to get things started, with the assumption that over time, your agency will absorb the cost and sustain the needed activities. The second piece, and this is a big one, is we see this as research and development for the field. I mentioned earlier the Innovation Suite. This grant program is part of that Innovation Suite, which means everyone is required to have a research partner, as you all put in your proposals. The idea behind that is, as you develop, implement, and test activities and initiatives to reduce violations and reduce recidivism, we'll be able to report out to the field on what's working and what's not working. And frankly, if evaluations are done comprehensively and you evaluate the process, we'll also be able to tell people how. And that's really important for other folks to replicate the good initiatives that you are trying out here. And overall, of course, this builds capacity. This moves the ball forward in the field. The objectives of the Innovations in Supervision Initiative are many, frankly. So what you see on the screen now is a bit of a sampling. So overall, as you heard me say just on the last slide, one of the goals of this program is to develop, implement, and test innovative and evidence-based practices. Now, you could do this in a number of ways, and as we heard earlier, you are all, in fact, doing this in a number of different ways. So one thing you might be doing is working with high-risk, high-needs supervisees. On the other hand, you might be targeting young adult supervisees. And in fact, if you're Baltimore, I believe you're doing both of those. Another thing we often see folks working on and that we strongly support is an increase in collaboration. We realize that justice doesn't happen in a silo and that sometimes there are walls to break down between agencies, and that could have to do with communication, it could have to do with data sharing, and these may be practice issues or in fact policy issues. Then the last box, the last circle you see on here is connecting supervisees to treatment and healthcare providers. And we also heard about that happening, for example, in Massachusetts. As a grantee in this program, there are a few requirements. First, you're required to participate in technical assistance with the NRRC. Sorry about that. You are also required to identify measures and strategies to track progress. You're going to receive content and facilitation support from your TA provider, and if you need to access an expert in the field, they can also facilitate that for you. And lastly, you are required to share your successes with stakeholders, the field, and we encourage you to share them with the press. Your TA provider can help you to be successful with each of these requirements. And now, I'll turn this over to Mary to describe things further.
Thanks, Heather. The Council of State Governments Justice Center, also a grantee at BJA, is the provider of the technical assistance for your grants, and I'll just give you a little background about the CSG Justice Center. Within the Justice Center, whoops, sorry, the slide didn't advance. Within the Justice Center, the National Reentry Resource Center is funded by the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and we provide support to Second Chance Act grantees in the broader field. The SCA, which was signed to law in 2008, is the first federal legislation to authorize federal support for reentry programs. Recognizing how complex reentry initiatives are and the importance of integrating research and evidence into those initiatives, the Second Chance Act authorized the creation of a National Resource Center for adult and juvenile reentry. In 2009, following a competitive process, the CSG Justice Center was selected to launch the National Reentry Resource Center, or NRRC, and provide training and technical assistance to all other Second Chance Act grantees. We administer the NRRC in close partnership with BJA. And on behalf of the staff and board of the CSG Justice Center, I would also like to congratulate you on your selection as the Second Chance Act grantee. SCA grant programs are highly competitive and sought after, and the policymakers at the federal, state, and local level are looking to SCA grantees to advance our understanding of effective reentry and recidivism reduction practices. We are wholeheartedly committed to providing support that will help make you the most out of your grants, and we look forward to working with each of you as you implement your projects. The NRRC website is a great resource for grantees and the field at large. You will find a directory of our latest projects, resources, facts and trends, and items in the news. Each topic page provides links to recent research and publications and news clips about the subject. The NRRC regularly hosts webinars on a wide variety of topics related to reentry, and all webinars are recorded, archived, and available on our website. You can also find these distant learning tools under resources. Also under resources, you can find publications. The NRRC is building a large online library of publications related to reentry. To date, there's over 1,200 items in our library. Through the search box on our site, you can access our publications as well as any other publications in the library. The Justice Center is also home to several projects such as the Reentry and Employment Project and What Works in Reentry Clearinghouse. The Employment Project is rooted in working with business leaders, policymakers, and practitioners across the country working in corrections and workforce to develop with the goal of improving reentry and employment outcomes for individuals with criminal histories. The Clearinghouse is a one-stop shop for research on the effectiveness of a wide variety of reentry programs and practices developed in partnership with the Urban Institute. We are constantly adding new resources, webinars, funding opportunities, and other news to our website, and we send out a monthly newsletter that will connect you to those new resources. We encourage each of you to sign up for our newsletter, which you can do on our website. Our goal as the TA provider is to help you to meet the requirements of your grant. This is done in a variety of ways, by providing education and learning opportunities for staff, sharing lessons learned across jurisdictions, facilitating conversations with federal partners, policy and procedure review and rewrites, translating research for practice, general program guidance, assistance on reporting outcomes to stakeholders, supporting public education efforts. Every grantee will have a standing monthly call with their TA provider, and at times we'll be in more frequent communication with you. We're always available via phone and email. We can connect you to experts in the field. There may be many commonalities across your projects and other active grantees projects. Those commonalities will include various trouble spots, and we can bring forth lessons learned and share resources. Well, you've all heard about it in the solicitation. Now it's coming to life for you. The NRRC has prepared the Planning and Implementation Guide, commonly called the P&I Guide, to support grantees in the implementation of their proposed initiatives and to help you track progress and make adjustments to maximize positive outcomes. The guide is not intended to serve as a step-by-step blueprint, but rather to help cultivate conversations and discussions about best practices, identify considerations for your collaborative effort, and help you work through key decisions and implementation challenges. Although the guide was developed as a tool for grantees, it also serves as an important tool for the TA provider to help understand the progress and status of your project, the types of challenges you're encountering, and the ways that your TA provider might be helpful to you in making your project successful. Your TA provider will ask for completed sections in advance of the scheduled TA calls in order to further discuss the exercises of the P&I Guide on the call. You and your TA provider will use your responses to the self-assessment portions of the guide to collaboratively develop priorities for technical assistance. These are the 6 sections of the P&I Guide. We'll touch on each of them briefly here today. The important thing to note is that you have proposed unique initiatives focusing on different elements of evidence-based practices. Your TA provider will help guide you through each section to address those distinctive elements. Section 1. There may have been updates or developments since your original application was submitted. The exercises in this section is intended to give your TA provider a sense of your current project goals and your initial technical assistance needs. Convene your team members, including stakeholders and partners, to confirm your goals and target population and to identify any revisions to your project plan since the proposal was submitted. The fact that you're here today represents the forward thinking of your leadership to respond to the solicitation, looking for innovations or improvements to your current strategies for supervision. Establishing this leadership structure and project roles is essential for improving supervision outcomes. Effective planning and implementation requires coordination across multiple agencies, state and local justice systems, and service providers. A leadership structure can help unite all system stakeholders around what works to improve supervision and other outcomes, and can increase public safety while promoting coordination across systems for data sharing, assessment, case planning, and service delivery. Finally, an effective leadership structure ensures that agency leaders work together to advance and support jurisdiction-wide supervision, policy, and practice changes. In this section, you will take an inventory of those partners and their roles in this initiative. There's also an opportunity to reflect on the types of communication and collaboration that is occurring both internally and externally. Are all the necessary players at the table to ensure that your project will be successful? As mentioned, each of your projects is unique, and your answers in this section will correspond accordingly. For those of you providing grant-funded staff training, such as Arizona, you'll discuss how staff were identified and recruited to participate, and what steps may be needed to include these new skills in your employee performance evaluation process. Others are targeting a specific population of supervisees with their grant funding. Pennsylvania is piloting pre- and post-release services for identified women currently housed in their state correctional institution, Muncie, that will be returning to 4 sites. Massachusetts will be piloting new supervision and treatment for those high-risk, high-needs individuals with a history of opioid misuse. Baltimore is focused on transitional age youth living within transformation zones. As you know, the risk principle states that the greatest reductions in recidivism will be achieved by focusing programming and resources on people who are assessed as having a higher risk of recidivism. Validated screening and assessment tools are utilized to identify the target population. Pennsylvania will be adding a gender-responsive tool. San Diego will be supplementing the COMPASS with behavioral health needs assessments. North Carolina will be taking current risk needs profiles and developing a data-driven approach to supervision strategies. St. Louis County will use risk needs information to guide the fast tracking of those individuals incarcerated for probation technical violations and address the identified needs of the probation violation population. As we discussed in the previous slide, Section 3 of the P&I Guide is an opportunity for you to define your target population, identify your risk and needs assessments, and what evidence-based programs will be implemented. This will look differently for each of your jurisdictions. For those of you that have proposed provision of direct services, we've provided some basic guidelines for developing and implementing quality programs. The first step is to conduct research to fully understand the needs of the target population and whether there are available resources to address those needs. Are there sufficient programs and program slots in each domain area to address the needs? For example, if the ideal group size is 10 for your behavioral health intervention and you have 80 potential participants, only a small fraction of those in need will be able to participate. Review the content of those programs to assess fidelity to evidence-based practices and any aspect of the program that can impact the outcomes, such as the staff skills or community linkages. Then address any of those deficiencies that you've identified by providing training to those that are facilitating the programs and services. Finally, develop strategies to hold service providers accountable, such as utilizing performance-based contracting. Section 4 of the P&I Guide looks further at your data collection process, performance measures, and developing your evaluation plans. One of the activities in this section is completion of a logic model. Some of you may have already completed a similar activity with your team as you were preparing for the proposal you submitted. A logic model demonstrates the causal relationships between goals, activities, and results. It's a useful tool to visualize the purpose and scope of proposed activities, including the resources needed and expected outcomes. For example, as you decide upon the larger goals of your initiative, have you thought about what resources will be needed to complete the activities and accomplish the objectives and goals? How long will each activity take to complete? Who will be responsible? What will be measured? These are great discussions to have with your evaluation research partner. Developing a well-thought-out logic model will help ensure achievement of your goals. The sample provided on the slide and in the guide walks you through two goals. The first is to implement risk and needs assessment. The resources needed to do this would include the grant funding and additional training funds for the correctional staff. By March of 2018, they've identified that they will integrate the tool for use during the intake process and during the reentry case planning. The process measures for this goal would be the number of assessments completed. The short-term outcome will be the administration of this assessment for all participants upon intake, and then the long-term outcomes will be that all case plans will be developed based on the results of the assessment. In a few minutes, Karen McAlister will describe further how this activity on the P&I Guide helped them focus on their project. This slide highlights the practitioner-evaluator partnership. In comparison to a traditional evaluation, action research is a continuous cyclical process as opposed to a linear process. It is also more fully engaging the practitioner of the program intervention than a transitional evaluation would. Rather than occurring after the event, the research is happening in real time and providing feedback to you so that you can make adjustments as are needed along the way. It is strongly recommended that you engage with your research partner right away to help you fine-tune your activities. As noted on the left of the slide, the Innovation Suite Researcher Practitioner Fellows Academy will be held this summer. This is one of your trainings required by BJA, but it's a wonderful opportunity for you to spend time with your research partner as well as the other grantees in your cohort, discussing and learning about the latest trends in action research. As we shift towards implementing evidence-based practices, there's also a need for leaders in the field to ensure accurate applications of those evidence-based practices and improve how staff monitor program outcomes. Fidelity to a given evidence-based program design is necessary to achieve the program's desired outcomes. One approach to effecting this type of systemic change is continuous quality improvement. The exercises in this section of the guide will help you conduct an inventory of staff trainings and identify what quality assurance components are in place to keep your staff performing at their best. For those providing or contracting for direct services to supervisees, the second activity in this section defines how those services include a means to assess adherence to the model. Sustainability is difficult to achieve and becomes even more challenging if neglected until the grant funding is coming to an end. Developing a sustainability plan at the onset is essential to building a strong initiative that can continue after the grant funding concludes. Program outcomes and other measures are instrumental in conveying the impact of the initiative. Collaborating with your evaluation partner about your sustainability strategies will provide the foundation for this effort. Connect sustainability to the evaluation. The action research partner should be able to document outcomes that grantees may use to make the case for continuing their work post the grant period. This was just a brief overview of the P&I guide and how completion of each activity will help shape your project to include the elements found to be successful. I'll now turn the presentation over to Kara McAlister, the Program Manager for the Coconino County, Arizona Adult Probation, to share about their Second Chance Act project and experiences with grant processes.
Thank you, Mary. I'm really happy to be on this webinar and share a little bit about our grant program here in Coconino County. We are a fiscal year 13 grantee that is just now in our final year of the grant project through a no-cost extension that we were able to receive. In our project, a little bit about what we were funded to do. It's basically a technology grant due to the vast geographical area of Coconino County. We have a lot of probationers that are rural and far away from Flagstaff where we're based. And we wanted to utilize technology that could bring services to those clients in the outlying areas and enhance their experience and help them with success on probation. So our grant has basically three components. We wanted to offer to all of our clients across the county some online curricula, online coursework that probationers can use to address some of their criminogenic needs and some of the things that they're in the system and under supervision for, and bring that, make that available to everyone that may not have had access to taking online classes in the past. Second component is we wanted to, we currently run an MRT or a moral reclamation therapy class weekly out of Flagstaff, and so the clients that are living in the Flagstaff area have access to that, but outlying areas, not so much. So we wanted to use that technology that the grant allowed us to purchase and tie in remote clients into our weekly MRT classes. And then finally, we have a virtual mentoring component to our grant. So we recruit volunteer mentors, and we have probation officers refer clients that could benefit from mentoring all over the county, no matter if they're 120 miles or more away. And we will match them up and let them talk either via email or text or Skype and have this virtual mentoring relationship and support in that way. So our grant does have a subcontractor, a partner that we contracted with. called Sunnyside Neighborhood Association. So we partnered with a nonprofit, and that's the organization that is administering the mentoring piece of the grant. So the grant provided for hiring of 2 mentoring specialists to work on that part. And then I'm the program manager that mainly focuses on the online curriculum and the MRT virtual. So next slide. So I just have some pictures here because in the first year of the grant when I got started working, it was basically planning and meeting with the different sites because we targeted 3 different areas in our county to focus on besides Flagstaff as the home base. So Tuba City, Arizona, on the Navajo Nation is within our county, and we have clients there. And we wanted to partner with the tribe and that location, the staff there, to share. Basically, we had to do a memorandum of understanding with the tribe, and we were successful in getting that done so that we could use their space, which you see on this slide. They have this great new complex where all of their law enforcement and probation and courts are all located there. So they allow us to use their space, and in the top left, we purchased, that's the room where we were able to put in our desktop computers purchased by the grant. And then there's a conference room also in that probation and peacemaking and parole building where we purchased a big screen TV, and we can use their conference room for clients to join weekly into MRT classes. Also, clients can come in and use those computers for their online coursework or to talk to their mentor. So that's kind of how, that's the model and how it looks in the other sites as well. So we did a similar thing with the Justice Court in Williams, Arizona, and then we put similar equipment, additional equipment into the adult probation office that we already staff in Page, Arizona. So Page is like 2 hours and 15 minutes away from Flagstaff. Williams is about 35 minutes. Tuba City is a little over an hour. So you can see that these clients, it's a real hardship for a lot of our clients to get to Flagstaff to get some of these services. And we're able to help them connect and have their probation be enhanced by being able to access some of these things. I would say getting started, it's a bit overwhelming when you come in on a new project, but the P&I guide really does help in going through all of the steps that Mary was talking about. You'll form a relationship fairly early on with your TA provider, and it's going to be key to stay in touch with that person because they can answer pretty much any question that you have. I have used my TA provider for so many things throughout the last 3 years, a little over 3 years. When you run into challenges, they have other grantees that have gone through similar things, and they have a lot of resources that they can make available to you. For example, we, in our project, ran into some challenges with working with the tribe and how to get referrals when you're working with a totally different system, and how to make that work and really make the partnership mutually beneficial. And our TA provider was able to put us on a phone call with another grantee that was in New Mexico, also working with tribes, and had run into some of the same challenges, and it was really helpful. So I would just suggest, you know, starting off by always calling on them. Let's see. Also, the research partner. One of the things I really, really love about this program is the active research that was mentioned. Our research partner has been with us from the very beginning. Was, you know, of course, they signed on to the project, but we started talking almost immediately. And I think the meetings that are hosted by BJA and its partners that bring you together right away with your research partner are so helpful. And then all along the way, we were able to develop and pull the data that we're going to be looking at and catch trends. And she asked me questions, and I can dig in and get that. And it just helps us all along the course to see how we're doing and what we could do better. So that's been a really key and critical relationship throughout the project to help us be successful. I would say utilize a site visit if it is at all possible. We had one site visit so far in our project, and it's just really good to have your TA providers come out and see where you are and sit with you and see the clients and watch the project that you're doing, and they just get a much better perspective, and then they can help you even more. So I would say utilize a site visit if at all possible. And basically, that's about all I had to share as far as an overview in my experience. So I'll turn it back over to Liz. Thank you.
It's really inspiring for me, having come from a rural background myself, to see how you've come up with some innovative solutions in connecting with your people under supervision. So keep up the good work. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Listeners, this is now your opportunity to ask any questions of any of the panelists. So please enter your questions into the Q&A panel box, and we'll get to as many as we can. Be sure to follow up with any that we aren't able to get to in the time allowed. We still have quite a bit of time left. And while we're taking your questions, I'll leave up this slide that has just a few resources that you might find beneficial. You can obtain more information on evidence-based strategies for probation and parole supervision. From the first one is the 10-step guide to transforming probation departments to reduce recidivism. The next is putting public safety first, 13 strategies for successful supervision and reentry. The next is maximum impact, targeting supervision and higher risk people, places, and times. And the bottom one is the National Institute of Justice published findings of the Researcher-Practitioner Partnership Study, which documents, synthesizes, and shares what makes partnerships between researchers and practitioners successful. Do we have any questions yet that we need to go to?
We have a question from Beth, and she is asking when the summer seminar is, the Researcher-Practitioner Partnership Seminar.
I don't know if they have an exact date yet, Heather. I know that from experience and from talking with them in the past, it's generally towards the last week of July, first part of August.
That's right, Mary. Unfortunately, we don't have a date yet, but as soon as we have that, we will get it out to you.
Kara, I had a question also come up. Would you do anything differently in the beginning of your planning process to make things go smoother?
Yes, actually, I do have a few suggestions for that when I look back. I would say something that you mentioned earlier is to start planning for sustainability as soon as possible. That's a really good point, and not something that we actually got on right away. And now that we're in the final year of our grant extension, it's really something we're focusing on. So in hindsight, I can see that looking toward the whole project with an eye toward that would be helpful, so that you can really have your programs last longer than the actual funding period. Also, just as far as like nitty-gritty stuff, I would suggest as far as reporting process, because you have to report every 3 months and then a semi-annual report every 6 months is a little more in-depth. Something that would have helped me to know in the beginning is to, number one, do everything that's narrative in Word and don't just enter it into the PMT system, but save it in Word and then copy it in there, because that will save you time as not losing things when it times out. So that's just a little practical tip. And you can get all of the required reporting, everything you're going to have to report about quarterly or semi-annually, and have it printed out ahead of time, which really helps because it helps you gather. It takes a long time to gather every quarter all the stuff that you're going to need. And so to have that laid out, it's really helpful. And then you can just go in when you start entering, and the process will run much smoother. I would say also keep the solicitation handy, because there's going to be multiple times when something comes up and you're not sure if this is allowable, or it's good to have that to go back to reference all the time as you need it. that's about it.
Those are excellent points, Kara. Thank you so much. And I'm sure you went through timing out on PMT a time or two before you realized it's good to do that ahead of time. We also have a webinar about PMT that we will make available for everybody that helps walk through some of those areas and helps you understand how best to report. And
Mary, if I could just jump in for a second.
Sure.
So all the grantees should be receiving an email shortly from the Booz Allen team within OJP about an upcoming webinar regarding those reporting metrics. So there will be a webinar to walk you through the requirements, definitions, and all that good stuff, as well as an opportunity to ask questions. So just keep an eye out for that invitation.
Great. Thank you, Heather. Last call for any questions that anybody might have. I'd like to give a special thanks to Heather Tubman-Carbone of BJA and Kara McAlister from Coconino County Probation, as well as Keisha Thornton and my colleague here in Bethesda is Blaine Stum at the CSG Justice Center. Remember to sign up for the NRRC mailing list for key resources, and this will conclude the webinar.